Mineta shut the door behind him. The dorms were buzzing with life as per usual, but this time he just couldn't be bothered. The acting and forced laughter was tiring, but nothing compared to having to shrug off the insults. Sure, Mineta knew his classmates didn't really mean to insult him. It was a joke, but they hurt. He was already physically weak with a weak quirk. The last thing he wanted was for his class to see he was mentally weak too. He felt worthless, and hiding it was too hard. Pretending like he had worth was tiring. He felt so alone despite being in a class with 19 others to connect with. Mineta lied down on his bed, curling into a ball and whimpering. The tears started to build the more he thought about it, about how he was useless, annoying, ugly. He wasn't even strong, and all in all, the class wouldn't change if he disappeared. Mineta held his breath, hands clasping over his mouth to hold in the whimpers that desperately wanted to come out. He choked on a sob that tore through his chest. His desire to make it all stop burned her throat. He didn't want to cry. Not right now. Not about this. It only proved that he was weak, and he didn't want to be weak. He desperately wanted to be strong for once. Yet, when he thought about the girls and how hated he was and how desperately he wanted to be loved, all his pain came flooding out. Mineta openly sobbed. His fingers tangled in his curls, tugging and pulling. Wails of misery came tumbling out of his mouth. His chest heaved and his eyes burned with the tears that came forth. He couldn't even hide the cries. Tried to keep them low or muffled. It didn't matter anyways because he was the class crybaby. Everybody in 1A knew he cried over anything. They would just chalk it up to Mineta being himself, wipe their hands of it, and call it a day. But more than anything, Mineta wanted somebody to care. Anybody. He was willing to do anything for some love and comfort. For somebody to tell him he wasn't worthless and useless. But instead, he sat alone, hugging his knees to his chest, whines dragging past his lips and filling the empty air with a pitiful cry of pain. He couldn't remember a time he fit in, a time that everything didn't hurt. His life was truly pathetic, wasn't it? 3 soft raps on his door made him shoot upright. The noise startled him, and for a moment he thought he was just hearing things. There was no way somebody was checking on him. That had never happened before, not once. Nobody had gone out of their way to knock. When had anybody actually checked on him? When had his ever parents come to comfort him when he needed it the most? Mineta quickly stood and walked to the door. His lungs begged to gasp out again, body not done with the tears he was forcing back. Mineta opened the door, almost too fast, yet he wished he had opened it faster, and looked up.
Bakugou? What? I mean...
Mineta looked Bakugou up and down. Words failed him, still stuck to his tongue like glue. Out of anybody in the dorms, for Bakugou to be at his door was the biggest surprise. When had Bakugou ever talked to Mineta outside of an insult? "You're crying." Bakugou pointed to Mineta's face, but his hand barely lifted from his side. "Why? You cry so much. What is it this time?" Bakugou was practically sneering down at him. His lip was drawn up in disgust. Despite his tone and posture, it was obvious that something was bothering him. Did he genuinely care? No. Mineta decided in that instance he didn't care.
I'm probably just disturbing him or something. Maybe everybody can hear me downstairs.
Mineta shrugged. Didn't bother trusting his mouth to convey what he really meant, and stayed silent. What was he supposed to say to that question anyways? Bakugou didn't say anything at first, shifted his weight from one leg to the other, and then let out a huff of agitation. Are you gonna answer me or just start crying again? What's the issue? Bakugou put his hand on the doorframe. Mineta just shrugged again, feeling the tears start up again, and decided that his silent crying must have answered the question. I don't get it. What happened, bald head? Bakugou asking, tone devoid of anger, but it wasn't caring either.
Do you?
Mineta looked up and then down again, almost ashamed of what he was going to ask.
Do you ever feel like maybe you should just disappear because nobody would miss you? I can't think of anybody who...
Mineta stopped early. Finishing the sentence would hurt too much. He sucked in a shaky breath and looked up at Bakugou and regretted instantly. Bakugou was gritting his teeth. He looked pissed. Beyond pissed. And for a second, Mineta wondered if this attention he sought, or the thoughts that he had, wouldn't be at his own convenience. You fucking idiot! Bakugou grit through his teeth and shot his hand out startlingly fast and hoisted Mineta up by his shirt collar. You would really say that? You know damn well people would miss your dumb ass. I mean, where would the jokes come from? Bakugou said with a venom Mineta had never heard before. Deku, shitty hair, even the blonde idiot would miss your antics. I'd bet... Bakugou stopped. He looked at Mineta's tearful eyes, but he didn't seem scared anymore, just hurting inside.
I'm sorry, Bakugou.
Mineta whispered, not noticing the way Bakugou's expression softened, and he sighed softly, setting the boy down, before straightening up. Bakugou shook his head slightly, rubbing his palms on his jeans. Look, you would be missed, okay? All of your antics would always be missed. Bakugou looked down at Mineta, but only to look him in the eyes, not because he thought less of the boy. You and everything you do is important, you know. Everyone is... Nobody should ever feel like they're hurting. Fuck, man! Bakugou trailed off, seeming troubled by something, and left Mineta a bit conflicted.
Do I ask? Is it even my place?
Mineta reached a hand out and grabbed onto Bakugou's.
You need to talk about it?
Mineta looked up to Bakugou in a literal and figurative way. Bakugou opened his mouth to say something. He desperately wanted to let it out, but he stayed quiet and shook his head. Mineta nodded and looked at their hands. Despite the explosions they could cause, the hands themselves were soft and delicate, and for some reason Mineta didn't want to address it. The way his small hand fit into Bakugou's made his skin tingle. You, have stuff you need to look out for. Listen, we all love you. Don't let one bad night fuck you the fuck up, okay? God fucking damn it, Mineta. Bakugou sounded exasperated, but Mineta was at a loss for how to help, so he just nodded, hoping that would satisfy Bakugou's worry.
Was he worried?
Mineta looked back to their hands, still dizzy from the touch. He didn't realize how touch-starved he truly was until now. Finding relief in Bakugou's clammy hand was something Mineta could not have predicted, and his life depended on it.
I won't, okay? I'm not gonna go do something rash.
Mineta stopped short, seeing Bakugou look down with an expression of fear and sadness. Mineta didn't know what had triggered that look, but he felt something very deeply and was feeling guilty for causing worry.
Did I say something wrong? I wasn't trying to upset you or worry you.
Mineta didn't want Bakugou to get a teacher involved for that comment. Didn't really want him to go anywhere, really. Bakugou's expression softened, but he still seemed to be hurt. Good. That would, fuck, man, that would just be... Bakugou looked away before crouching down and getting close to Mineta's ears to whisper something. Listen, I've said some awful shit to people. Good people. If you ever need help, just come get me. Look, I'm shit at this. I'm really shit, but it's better than seeing you fucking not being here anymore. If you left the school, what would I... With that, Bakugou stood up, seeming distant and flushed. Mineta cocked an eyebrow before snorting a few times. Now Bakugou's turn to be confused.
You might be bad, but I don't feel sad. I guess I like talking to you. Weird, huh?
Mineta looked back up and their eyes locked. Mineta felt a whole lot of things in that moment, but it all could boil down to fire, deep and burning in his chest. Bakugou nodded, breaking eye contact but never taking his hand away. I should go. With that, Bakugou finally let go of Mineta's hand and walked off. Mineta shut the door and sat against it, looking at his hand with a sense of confusion. Whose heart burns that way when they look at a friend anyways? End of part 1.